patient in a much bigger trial that we're now running. So I did this with my colleagues in the nutrition department at UCL. We weren't doing this casually. And it wasn't an extreme diet. So I ate a normal diet for a British teenager, 80% of my calories from UK food. There'll be lots of people in Norway who get 80% of their calories from UPF. So I did a 4-week washout, no UPF at all, incredibly hard. I really craved it. And I really was excited to do this diet because it gave me permission to go and eat all the food that middle-aged doctors with kids, I'd stopped eating Nutella with a spoon, and I didn't have Cocoa Pops for breakfast, and I didn't get KFC takeaway every night. Am I okay mentioning brands? Sorry, I've been doing it.
No problem.
I'm mentioning lots of brands. They're all the same. So I was excited to do the diet, and for 2 weeks I enjoyed it, but I became quite ill. And I didn't know until I stopped eating the food at the end really how unwell I had become, because the weird thing about eating food is it doesn't make us instantaneously ill. If you have a dinner of ultra-processed food, it's usually got a very high salt content and you eat it to excess. So you go to bed full of salt and full of food. And you don't sleep very well. If you're my age, you get up and you pee. You often can't go back to sleep. You become constipated. It's quite low in fiber. So you get piles and bum problems and gastric problems. And as you get more tired, we all know when we're tired, we eat worse food. You get a stress response. So you often solve your fatigue and your heartburn and your belly pain by eating and drinking more ultra-processed food.
Yeah.
But you locate the stress with the people in front of you. When your kids are misbehaving, you're screaming at your kids. My kids misbehave or behave very constantly. Whether I scream at them is entirely about how much sleep I've had. And so I became very difficult for my wife and kids, I think, to live with. And I started feeling like all my patients. So I aged a lot. So the scientific results were interesting. And remember, I did not do this. I wasn't forcing the food in. And I did it as something of a skeptic. So I was not persuaded about that all this was real. There were 3 kind of big effects. I gained a lot of weight, 6 kilos. I've never really lost that weight. So I still have my kind of UPF tummy. Losing weight at my age is very, very hard.
Wow.
I would have doubled my body weight in a year if I'd kept eating. So, and this is what happened to my twin brother.
Was this last year or?
No, this was, hold on, when was it? It was first year of the pandemic. I think it was late 2020.
Okay.
So I gained a lot of weight. We did brain scans and my brain scans very significantly changed. And so this, you could say, well, this is just one patient, but these, I was working with the top medical physicists and the neurophysiologists at UCL at our National Center for Neurology, and they set all the thresholds. So we're very clear these were big changes. Nothing else big in my life had changed. So we're pretty sure it was the diet. And we saw the back of my brain, the automatic behavior bit, the cerebellum, much more connected to the addiction reward bits in the middle. What exactly that means, we don't entirely know. It's consistent with the kind of scans we do in people with addiction problems. And it's really worrying because if you see these kind of functional changes in me in my 40s, what's it doing to children who eat this diet all the way through their brain development? What's it doing to their learning about nutrients and food? So, and then we saw my hormone response to a meal change. So when you eat food, your body releases signals. When you're hungry, you've got hunger hormones. When you're full, you've got fullness hormones. At the end of the diet, when I ate a meal, my hunger hormones didn't decrease and my fullness hormones didn't really increase. So we saw a big change in the hormone response. But the most interesting thing was midway through the diet, I had a conversation with this colleague in Brazil, and she just kept saying, this isn't real food. And that was the moment I became disgusted. So, and it's only when we leave an addiction behind that I was able to go, oh, wow, I was really addicted.
How did she say that?
So let me see if I can do it for people now. Save people money on the book. Sorry, my poor publicist sitting in the corner there. But I do want, the problem with the book is it's going to cost you, I don't know what it is in Norway, £20 in the UK. Like the people who need the book the most can't afford the book. And the people who need the book the least are all going to buy it and they're going to get worried about emulsifiers. She kept saying to me, this is not food. Its purpose is profit. Food's purpose is to nourish people, and it's created with love and affection and to bind a community together. Ultra-processed food is an industrially produced edible substance. It is not food by any normal definition. And she kept saying it. And during the phone call, I didn't notice particularly. And that night I ordered, in the book actually, it's a turkey Twizzler that I eat. The reason, when you write a book, you have to sort of spread facts out, and that it was actually KFC hot wings, but I'd already written about KFC earlier in the book, so I made it a turkey Twizzler. The effect was the same. So I sat down to eat this food, and I just couldn't finish them. They became disgusting. So they tasted the same, but I felt like I could taste that the spices weren't real. They're spice extracts. You could taste there's the recipe for KFC isn't available in the UK, but I felt like, so I can't confirm this, but in Canada there would be flavor enhancers. So the Canadian recipe is flavor enhancers. There's a thing called dimethyl polysiloxane, which is used in the oil as an anti-foaming agent. There's lots of weirdness. The chicken is brined. So I went from being in love to falling out of love very quickly.
Wow.
So we don't understand this process very well in science. Love and disgust, those very strong emotions, are quite closely linked. People will know this from their romantic lives, from relationships with drugs, alcohol, cigarettes. You can love and hate a thing at the same time. You can be very attracted toward a thing and then suddenly repulsed. And we know smokers particularly report this kind of sudden revulsion. And so I have tried to write the book in a way that if you eat along by the end of the book, you will not want the food anymore. And I don't promise that will be the effect, but lots of people have written to me and went, oh, I did your experiment and now I don't want the food. And I've had to buy a bread maker and an ice cream maker because I can't eat it anymore. And I don't make my own bread. I buy it. But
so you don't eat any UPF now?
Almost none. I don't want it. I almost don't crave it. I really don't crave it. There are tiny little moments. Some of my kids' sweets, when they have some jelly beans, I still like a jelly bean, I guess. But I don't really. It's not a problem. It's like sometimes you see someone having a beer and you think, oh, I'd like a beer. But then it's the middle of the day and you don't have a beer. There are moments I eat it to be polite. I went out last night in Oslo. We had a late talk. I went to a bar with my mother-in-law, and actually loads of the people who'd come to this talk I'd given with Marit. And the only food available was like a platter of meat and cheese and bread. Now, I don't know if the bread was ultra-processed or not, but I ate it. It was late. And I was very self-conscious. All these people who'd just been listening to me on stage, watching me eat this meat. But, it was like Parma ham. That's not UPF. It's just ham and salt, pork and salt. So almost never. But I will eat it to be polite. My kids are not forbidden, so my kids eat quite a lot of it. They eat it at school. But my 6-year-old is good. She understands there is good food. She will eat fruit and vegetables. She likes treats, but the one thing they never have is fizzy soda. They don't have pop. I think that's probably the worst thing you can have.
Yeah. So what was the impact on your mental health during this experiment?
What happened to me was exactly what all the evidence says. So I became very anxious and very unhappy. And we don't know why it happened. So it's not hard to imagine there are several things going on. The food contains a lot of additives that we think may directly affect the brain. The food contains a lot of additives that inflame your body. And if you inflame your whole body, you inflame your brain. Brain is part of your body, and that's probably not good. But you also, I think, mental health, if you are not in control of any aspect of your life, it causes stress and anxiety, whether that is a drug, whether that is your work, or whether that is your food intake. And I was not in control. So, and I was gaining weight and I was aching. I was sort of in pain. And I was constipated. I mean, if you can't have a poo, then it makes you feel unhappy, So I think that was probably driven by a lot of different stuff. When I stopped the diet, I was so happy to stop. And within 1 day I felt better. Within 72 hours, I'd had 2 good nights sleep. It was like the weather had changed. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I felt so much better. And I said to my wife, God, I'm so sorry. I was like, please, it was like it was like an addict in the throes of a binge, not really in control of themselves.
Did you go into a fast, or did you go into raw food, or?
No, well, no. So first of all, I went, and so this is, I hope, one of the things that means I'm not an extremist. So I was like, now I'm only going to eat non-UPF. But all the evidence says if you don't eat UPF, you'll lose weight. So I went to my local, I've got this very good delicatessen in my house, and I put like ham and cheese, I bought all this delicious food, and I actually gained even more weight. So you can gain weight if you're in your mid-40s and you start eating very delicious, fancy non-UPF food. Then I sort of cleaned up a bit and lost a bit of weight. But I mean, weight loss is hard. You know, anyone looking at me coming to Oslo will be like, oh, I'm slender build. I'm not broad shouldered, but I have a gut, and it's not trivial losing that. So, and it's harder the bigger you are. So I'm very aware that weight loss is hard.
What were your personal reflections on this journey afterwards?
Mainly that the whole thing, this whole experience, there is a vulgarity to it that I'm aware of, that I am able to dip into this nightmare that for some people is mandatory. And so no one has kind of objected to this, but I was really going and eating like someone who didn't have much money for a while. And I was able to leave that world and return to a food environment that's very different. And most people cannot do that. And in Norway, I think this is a less big problem. You have less poverty here, you have less social injustice, but there will be many people in Norway who cannot afford to eat real food. Real food spoils very quickly. It's very expensive per calorie. If you go and buy broccoli per kilo, some of it's the same price as beef per kilo, and you got to prepare it and cook it. You got to own knives and chopping boards and a fridge and blah, blah, blah. So, my main feeling is that I am very fortunate that I can afford to eat good food. And I think my desire is to change the food environment for people who are born in very different circumstances to the ones I was born in.
That